Lian Bichsel and Emil stand out in Traverse City. We go over the biggest takeaways from this past weekend's prospect tournament and the biggest storylines from the Dallas Stars heading into training camp.
You're Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. I'm Joey Erickson, former producer 105 Through the Fan. Please be sure to subscribe. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. And as always, thank you so much for making us a part of your day and making us your first listen. Welcome to a Monday edition of Locked On Stars, and welcome back to everyday episodes. That is right. We are every day from here on out. Training camp begins in a couple of days. The first preseason game is on Saturday. Hockey season is finally back, baby. We have to talk about this past weekend's prospect tournament in Traverse City. Lian Bichsel and Emil stood out, and there was also a surprise I want to share with you today as well. Plus, the biggest storylines for the Dallas Stars heading into training camp. At least my biggest storylines. What is this lineup going to look like? Who's going to pop off? Who's even going to regress? All of that good stuff a bit later on. So hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, never miss an episode of Locked On Stars. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So in terms of results from this past weekend in Traverse City, the Dallas Stars did not do very well. They go 0-2 against the Red Wings. They lost 5-1 on Saturday. They actually surrendered 5 unanswered goals in the third period. And then on Sunday, they fall 3-2 to the Red Wings. They added a late 6-on-5 goal to cut the deficit to 1, but unable to find the equalizer. So the Stars go 0-2 on the weekend. The good news is the results really do not matter. It's about these prospects. And Bichsel and Hemming certainly stood out in game 2 for the Dallas Stars. I do want to preface, I did not watch these games, had a conflict of my own, but 100 Degree Hockey and Blackout Dallas put out a few articles on the game, and I want to share with you some of their takeaways and thoughts because this really is important. This is the Dallas Stars' future. Which prospect stock went up? Which ones even went down? Maybe we can fade heading in to 2024-25. We begin with Lian Bichsel, who had a nice bounce back effort in game 2. And as you've heard me say throughout the summer, I think the best thing for the Dallas Stars is Bichsel turns into a really solid NHL defenseman this next season. However, as Chris points out on 100 Degree Hockey, he believes Bichsel will need the Thomas Harley treatment this upcoming season. He's going to need a season under his belt in the AHL. So maybe we can pump the brakes on Bichsel establishing himself as an NHL defenseman in 24-25, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I just think adding Bichsel to this D-core will really solidify it, or at least give it some juice, because I think it just lacks juice. And to be fair, we haven't seen the Dallas Stars play a single game yet. But I have a feeling that Dallas is going to need to improve somewhere on the back end before the trade deadline so they can make a postseason push. That is one of my early predictions here for the Dallas Stars. But I do want to highlight some of the positives and areas of improvement for Lian Bichsel. So this article is written by Chris Chambers of 100 Degree Hockey, and he said Bichsel had a big bounce back game after the abysmal game 1. He actually finished -4 in that 5-1 loss. He was on the ice for all the goals against, and he finished game 2 with an even rating, and he was much more confident in the defensive zone, he writes, using his large frame to protect the puck, win puck battles, and make cleaner outlet passes from his own end. Also not afraid to show his offensive talent. I believe he hit the post in this game, wasn't afraid to shoot the puck. He finished with 3 shots on goal and was somewhat frequently drifting towards the net when the Stars got the cycle going in the offensive zone. He mentioned some of the positives over the weekend for Bichsel. He knows how to use his massive 6'6" size advantage. He's very confident protecting the puck with his body, using his muscle to move the pile during a puck battle on the boards. Did not have any big hits, but he did mention the Red Wings prospects had their heads on a swivel when he was on the sheet. In terms of areas where he can improve, and this is something to keep an eye on in training camp, also in the preseason games. The number one issue that Bichsel displayed was his inability to use his stick defensively. He was beaten by the Red Wings forwards when he reached for poke checks or failed to make solid stick checks around the crease. While some Dallas fans hope Bichsel will make the push to be in the NHL this year, he mentions he thinks he will greatly benefit from having a Thomas Harley type treatment. So maybe we need to pump the brakes on him coming up, because I mentioned maybe in December or January, he finds himself making a push for the lineup. But maybe he does need a full season in North America, because this will be his first full year over in Texas after playing the majority of the year overseas last season. So it will take some time for him to improve, and there's some chatter about him not making the right decisions. He needs to be better in his own zone, and for him to crack the lineup, he's going to have to be trusted by Pete DeBoer and the staff in all three zones of the rink, especially in his defensive zone. We all knew Thomas Harley had the offensive game. Harley always had that in him. He needed to go back down to Texas and sort of figure it out in the defensive zone. And if it's one thing that Bichsel needs to improve on, it's that first pass, being cleaner on his breakouts and just making decisions quick enough. He can get away with more of his mistakes over in Europe and possibly even the AHL, just because of his size and his ability to use his frame to box guys out and stand out that way. But at the NHL level, playing against guys that are just as big as him, even faster, stronger, he needs to be more decisive and, of course, a lot quicker with his decisions. So there are some areas for him to improve. We all know he has the size. He has shown some flashes offensively, but can he find himself in the right positions? Where's his positioning relative to the puck in front of his own net? How does he fare against forwards in front of his own crease? How does he tie sticks up? Those are the little nuances of the game he's going to have to get better at. And I think he has a good foundation, and he'll be able to find that part of his game in Texas. So maybe there needs to be a little pushback about Lian Bichsel, or we can pump the brakes a bit about him just jumping into the mix here in training camp or jumping in on the roster day one. We all know salary cap and all that has to play into it. So there are a few bodies in front of Bichsel at the end of the day. They have Brendan Smith who can play. They have Labushkin, of course, and Matt Dumba they brought in. So there are a certain number of guys on the depth chart right now that are in front of them. That can change, of course, after training camp. But all in all, good positives from Lian Bichsel over this past weekend, which is a great sign. We now segue over to Emil Heiskanen, the first-round pick for the Stars this summer. And it was a head-scratcher to some, but he is from Finland, so the connection there makes a lot of sense. But there were some names on the board, including E.J. Emery, that many Stars fans, including myself, were very intrigued on. But Hemming had a nice weekend as well, which was a great sign. And he did come up with a power play goal, or an assist, I should say, on a power play goal in game one. And then in game two, he showed a really nice game and improvement as well. He scored the Stars' lone goal in the second period with a good shot from the faceoff circle, assisted by defenseman Luke Chris. This is what Chris Chambers writes. Hemming was also very confident with the puck on his stick. He skated laps around the offensive zone multiple times, looking for open passes, and found a few grade A chances. His options are wide open as far as this year's playing prospects. Hemming has a lot of skill with the puck, and it'll be worth keeping an eye on. Of course, he was drafted in the OHL by the Barrie Colts, where we expect him to play the majority of the season. Of course, if he stands out, he could possibly get some time in Texas. But Brian Sweet also did an article on the games this weekend, and he mentioned Hemming had great chemistry with Arttu Hyry. I don't know if that's exactly how you pronounce the name. It is spelled a bit weird, but I think it's Arttu Hyry, and he was the big surprise of training camp. And Brian Sweet writes that this weekend's biggest standout was Hyry and Hemming's chemistry. They had 2 goals this past weekend. Hemming had the primary assist and both goals, and he would like to see them stay together when they play in the AHL, or at least play through the preseason games in training camp. So he was impressed by Hemming as well. And I believe Chris wrote on top of it that he was a bit surprised by the first-round pick of Emil Hemming, but he noticed why the Stars were a bit high on him. He's got a big shot. He can skate decently well, and he showed a lot of those attributes this past weekend in Traverse City. So those are good signs from what are really, at this point, kind of your top 2 prospects for the Stars in Hemming and Bichsel. Bork is still kind of considered a prospect, but we have an idea of what he's going to bring. How much of an impact, we do not know yet. That may be one of my storylines. A little tease for you there upcoming. So Bichsel and Hemming have good weekends, but Arttu Hyry was somebody that really stood out for a lot of different people for the Stars. And Mike Heika also tweeted that the Stars are pretty bullish on him to maybe make an impact in the NHL at some point throughout his career. He was signed as a free agent in the offseason. He had a goal in game 1 against Detroit on the power play, and he also had a couple of assists on the weekend as well. So some interesting stuff there. He's from Finland. Shocker, shocker. He's a right shot. He's 6'2", 214 pounds. So a pretty big forward, not quite Emil Hemming size, but he played with Finland internationally last season, had 10 points in 19 games. He played in Liga last season with Karpat. He had 31 points in 55 games. So he's someone to keep an eye out on as well. So that was the big surprise from this past weekend in Traverse City. So some good news all around. I mean, Bichsel and Hemming were 2 of the players that I think probably have the most chatter around them in terms of the Stars. But I do want to share some more thoughts and some flowers to other prospects that did stand out that Chris and Brian wrote about in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by FanDuel. You heard us talk about FanDuel all season long and all summer, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, they have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV-based plan, you'll be able to watch every single regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Football season is back. We all get to plop on the couch on Sundays now and just watch football all day long, or Saturday if you're a big college football fan as well. So go ahead and go to FanDuel and get the 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket. All FanDuel customers can get it, by the way. Just bet $5. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Just visit FanDuel.com. Download America's #1 sportsbook. Alrighty, some other prospects that I did want to shout out from this past weekend. Many of you know I'm pretty keen on Matthew Seminoff as well. He was the teammate of Logan Stankoven in Kamloops over the past few seasons. And Seminoff was named the captain of the prospect team. They said he had a great showing in the 2 games, continued his defensive and forechecking proficiency in the second game, created lots of turnovers in the Red Wing zone, has tenacity on the penalty kill, which led to several shorthanded scoring chances. And Seminoff was not known for his offensive ability in Cedar Park last year, but he showed some improvement in that department during this tournament. So that could be great news for the Texas Stars, who, of course, are losing 2 very talented offensive guys in Stankoven and Bork. They're going to need some help in that department next season. And Chris mentions here, speaking of offensive ability, Chase Wheatcroft. We did not talk about him last season really at all because he was injured. He was without a doubt the Stars' most dynamic player in the offensive zone, showed some flashy stick handling, great sight with some tricky passes that led to scoring chances, and he had some great shots in game one, just did not find the back of the net. The lack of execution was thing, but Wheatcroft was a bright spot on the team and poised to become a much bigger part of the Texas Stars this season. And although they didn't score a ton over the weekend, both Brian and Chris kind of came away with the fact that the Stars generated some looks. They hit the post, I think, like 6 times, like half a dozen times in game 2. So they were creating some looks, which is a good sign. They just didn't find the back of the net enough, of course. So Brian writes that the coaching staff has sort of a baseline now for training camp. Pete DeBoer didn't coach the prospects, but he said the highlights that the coaching staff got from this past weekend should give DeBoer an idea of who he wants to see play with each other. And he knows Hemming and Hyry will probably get paired together. Just because the Stars went 0-2 doesn't mean they didn't come away with anything the last 2 days. And as I mentioned, their exhibition games, the results really do not matter. But I think the big headline is Hemming and Bichsel looked good after a tough game 1. They came out and played really nicely in game 2. And Bichsel especially is the guy that we're looking at in training camp. And he is going to be, I think, the most intriguing storyline in training camp for the Dallas Stars as we kind of segue into this segment as well, or wrap this one up. Bichsel is someone I can't wait to watch because I haven't really got to watch him in a full game and see him in that environment. I want to see how he looks, particularly towards the end of the preseason when you start playing some opponents that use the majority of the roster or a bit more players that you're going to see on an everyday basis during the regular season. How does he fare up against like veterans in the NHL? Does his size really stand out? Does he look lost? Does he look like he gets it? Is he aware, right? Like those are the sort of things I'm going to keep an eye on throughout training camp and the preseason. Does he get some penalty kill time, some power play work? What does that all look like? And maybe he does need a full season in the AHL. But boy, would I love for him to be knocking on the door come December. But I think as Chris wrote in 100 Degree Hockey, that maybe needs to be there needs to be some caution when it comes to just bringing him up right away, right? Because that might not necessarily be the best case for the Stars, number one, because they do have bodies. They have NHL bodies. And it could not be the best for Bichsel. And the Stars also have to be careful. You don't want to just kill the kid's confidence right away. If he comes up and he's not playing very good and you have to healthy scratch him, every other night, right? Which that's not going to be the plan with the Stars at this point. Maybe with Lundqvist, that's going to be the plan, but not with Bichsel. You want to keep his confidence up. And I've said this as well, like last season with Stankoven, dominate the AHL. Show you can play there. And then the Stars have no choice to bring him up. So if he starts to dominate, starts to understand the game, he could be ready to go. But I will say defensemen usually take longer. Got to play a few more games. It's just a different style of game, especially at the NHL level. And even newcomers take some time to find their game in the NHL. And let's face it, the Stars can't necessarily just have Bichsel just kind of play along and sort of figure it out. They're trying to win games. They're trying to solidify a playoff spot. They're trying to win the division, right? Pete DeBoer wants to obtain as many points as possible. They don't necessarily want to subscribe to the fact that they can just let guys develop, which you can argue is a good or bad thing. But I think the only way Bichsel will crack the lineup is if he's just ready, right? And as I mentioned a few weeks ago, it was a good sign, I think, that Bichsel was going to play in a playoff game in the Western Conference Final against Edmonton if Tanev was unable to go. I think that's a good sign heading into training camp. So we'll see how it all takes place. We'll see what transpires. But boy, am I excited. So let's go into the biggest storylines, my biggest storylines for the Dallas Stars heading into training camp. I'll share those in just a moment. So Lian Bichsel is one of the more intriguing storylines heading in to training camp for the Dallas Stars this week. But we'll switch over to some others I have. I think the biggest one for me, at least, is where does Miro Heiskanen play? Is he going to be on his strong side? Can you pair him with Lyubushkin or Dumba? Or are we going to see him on the weak side? I'll be completely honest. I don't want to see Miro on his weak side this year. And I know him and Harley are incredible together. Also, okay, I'll revise this statement. I don't want to see him on his weak side to begin the year. Because we know what he can do with Thomas Harley. We know that's a nice dynamic pairing. You finally brought in some right shots. Let's get Miro on his strong side. And we brought up the Roman Polak comparison as well when they brought in players like Lyubushkin and Dumba. Dumba, a more defensive-minded forward, or defenseman, excuse me. So is Lyubushkin, a bit bigger in size. And he worked great with Polak. Miro did. But again, Polak was towards the end of his career. He's a bit older. Dumba and Lyubushkin are considerably much younger, not considerably, but younger at this point in their careers. I think it's time to get Miro on his strong side. And I want to see that to begin the year because you have the backup plan of going to Harley. We all know we can play with Harley. And let's face it, Miro can play with anybody. It's if they can play with him. So I want to see that throughout training camp. I want to see that in the preseason. Have him paired with Dumba, Lyubushkin. Find out who's going to be a good partner for him. Because I think it's going to open up his game, his offensive game, which will therefore open up the Dallas Stars' defensive game. I think they need to get a bit more offense out of their back end. That was something that they didn't get consistently a ton of last year, besides Harley. I mean, Harley was all over the place, double digits in goals. But I want to say Lindell was your second leading scorer on the back end. It could have been Miro, but I want to say it was Lindell. Miro needs to be in that conversation. And if he can progress to a point per game player, then you're off and running. So I think that's my biggest one, the biggest storyline. Where's Miro going to play? Or who's he going to play with? Because, man, I got to see him on his strong side. I really do. I got to see it. We've been deprived of it for years. Storyline number 2. Is this Wyatt Johnston's team? Is Wyatt Johnston going to just take over next season? Is he going to be the guy, right? Is he going to have some aura around him, as they say nowadays? Like Robertson had 114 points, whatever it was, a few seasons ago. Thought he may be kind of the guy. And he dipped a little bit. I think he'll improve again. He'll get back up to that century point mark. Talking like he didn't score, a point per game last year, but is Wyatt Johnston going to be like the dude? Is the torch being passed from Jamie Benn to Wyatt Johnston? That's my other storyline in training camp. Boy, I love this kid. Love watching him play the game. Love watching him play the game. Does he have 40 goals in him? Is he going to be like, okay, like I'm sort of taking this over now. I'm going to be the leader of this new wave with Ottinger, Robertson, and Rope, right? That's my second one. That's my second storyline. Number 3, and at this point, it feels like this could be a storyline for the next few seasons, or it has been. What are you going to get out of Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin again? Can we continue to expect them to kind of punch above their weight, so to speak, like they have over the past few years in terms of their production? I mean, Sagan's approaching his mid-30s. Ben's already there, playing the last year of his contract. Yeah, what does that look like? Are they going to punch above their weight? Are they still going to be effective? It helps that you are surrounding them with a lot of young players, young, cheap players, I might add. So are they going to continue to punch above their weight? Seguin missed some time last year. I mean, injuries have sort of riddled him in his career. And then Ben, yeah, he stays healthy. You feel good about his game if you pair him with Johnston or Bork or Stankoven or anybody like that, which is a good sign. So I think that's another one I'm looking at. And my final one is, and this is pretty cookie cutter, an easy one, but I got to throw it in there. When is Thomas Harley going to sign? I think that's a fair question. Are the Stars going to get him done before training camp? General Manager Jim Nill has no concerns about it. Doesn't seem to be nervous or flustered, anxious, whatever adjective you want to use. They feel pretty good that they're going to get it done. But, hey, it's Monday. I can check Twitter here just to make sure he hasn't signed in the last 30 minutes. Doesn't look like it. So, yeah. Where's Thomas Harley? Is Harley going to sign? Sidney Crosby signed a 2-year extension, by the way. So they're bringing him back. Just to throw that out there. But yeah, Thomas Harley, that's another one. When is he going to get back in the building? So yeah, those are my storylines. I think the big ones. Where the heck's Miro going to play? Bichsel, obviously. I want to see him in action. Is Wyatt Johnston like the dude? Are we passing the torch over to Johnston? I know there was some thought back in the day. I mean, like a few years ago, like Ty Dellandrea was going to sort of be that guy, but didn't necessarily have the firepower to do that. He would have been a good leader. Everybody loved him in the locker room, but is Johnston that guy? Like he's going to be sort of the captain to come. I'm fascinated by him. I really am. He's just such a good player. And I think he's going to be, I've said it, I think he's going to be like a top 5 center iceman in the game at some point. And that could be outlandish to say with the Crosbys and the McKinnons and the McDavids and the Matthews in the world. But hey, I think he's that good. And we're not going to sell him short. We're not going to sell him short. Because it's not like we expected a lot out of him his rookie year. Oh, yeah, this kid can play. And then his second season is like, whoa. Like, this guy's taking over games. Like, he's taking over games. He's the best player on the sheet half the time. So, yeah, those are my top storylines heading into training camp and some of the big prospect tournament takeaways. Big thanks to 100 Degree Hockey and Blackout Dallas for putting out these articles. It's great stuff. I really encourage you to go over there and read each article in full as well. There's game recaps on there, and they go a bit more in depth on some of the games. And I wanted to share those with you. I know they're not necessarily my thoughts, but I thought it was important for the listeners of this show to get an idea of who played well, since I was busy over the weekend and I can't watch, unfortunately. But here we go, baby. Hockey's back. Training camp begins. Yeah, we're 6 days away now from the Stars kicking off the preseason against the St. Louis Blues, Saturday, September 21st. So be on the lookout for that. Yeah, it's on Victory Plus, by the way. A heck of an app so far. I love it. We'll see what happens when the games happen. But as of right now, really nice job from the president and CEO, Brad Alberts. Like, double thumbs up to the Dallas Stars. This looks like it's going to be a huge success. We'll see when the games happen. Like, live games are a bit different. We'll see. But to be fair, I don't think the Stars have put out a product that they haven't tested or think 100% highly of. So there we go. That wraps up a Monday edition of Locked On Stars. A lot of fun things on the docket. We'll continue some of our season previews. We're doing a Locked On Central Division little roundtable. That will come out next week. A lot of fun things. We'll do some more crossovers as the season gets a bit closer as well. Hit the subscribe button. We're almost to 2,500 subscribers. Let's get there before opening night for the Dallas Stars. Hit the like button, drop a comment below as well. By the way, if you watch the prospect tournament games, drop your comments. I want to see your observations. I want to see what you took out of the few games this past week in Traverse City. Anyways, have a great rest of your Monday. And yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. So long, Stars fans.